Are you seriously going to eat, you fat blibbity blabbity blob? I mean,
It's
some of you might be like,
continual.
why would I want to start this?
Sensitive. She's sensitive.
You are listening to the Tami Talks Unscripted Healing Podcast, where we share stories that are, you guessed it, unscripted.
That's the thing, this journey doesn't stop.
It doesn't really
right?
end. We have a general sense of the topic each episode, but really the whole point is just to show up and be authentic and let our inner child speak its truth. And I have continued to work through that story of constantly hearing, well, we don't want, got a hot dog on our hands. Yeah, guess what, Mr. Sabatsky, you do. So I'm so excited that you are here, and it is my hope that you hear yourself somewhere in the story so that way you can feel seen and heard as well. So let's start talking. Welcome to the Tami Talks Unscripted Healing Podcast. I am so excited to sit down again, and I'm kind of loving this format. So the way I recorded the first 8 episodes was a little bit different than I've recorded these last 3, and I'm loving that I can just sit down and hit record because I'm a very in the moment intuitive person. And when I get a hit or a download, I want to be able to sit down and give you that, because that's when I'm in my feels, my raw emotion. That's when you're going to get my best energy. And so I wanted to be able to record these a little bit more intuitively. And so this is kind of fun. And so I had no intentions of recording a podcast episode today, but I had a conversation earlier with this amazing woman, and it inspired this topic. So here I am. I was planning on having a guest for your guys' next episode, but again, I'm just kind of doing this unscripted, and I wanted to go with this topic because it feels very, I don't know what the word is, relevant to a lot of our journeys in so many ways. And so this gives me another little segue into when you are listening to these episodes, not everything I say is going to resonate with you, right? But here's what I want you to do is just to drop in and see how the message resonates for you. Maybe you don't have, food issues and all of this kind of stuff, but how could these things be showing up in other areas of your life? Whether it's your career, whether it's relationships, whether it's stuff with your kids. Because today I'm going to be talking about control versus surrender. And I have lots of examples around food in my body, but I want you, if that isn't your story, I want you to think about where in other areas of my life am I controlling things versus allowing myself to surrender to the process. Because I think you would find like, oh boy, I do this. Yeah, you do. And so anyway, we got talking about my health journey. She was asking me some questions, and we were looking at my progress pictures over the last 8.5 years, because believe it or not, I actually was brave enough to take a before picture 8.5 years ago on October 19th, 2015. And what's hilarious about this is you can tell I had zero intentions of letting anyone ever see that picture because of what I'm wearing, how I look, and that for some reason there was a butternut squash sitting on the floor. I took this picture in my bedroom, and I have no idea why there was a butternut squash sitting on the floor, but there was. But now it makes for a funny story, so here we are. But what was interesting is, one, that my ego even let me take a before picture, but I know in the back of my mind, I can think back to that day. The ego, despite me being brave and courageous and showing up and taking that picture, my ego is still in the back of my mind saying, yeah, you're not taking an after picture. You never do. How many before pictures have you taken and you have never actually followed through with anything to be able to take an after picture? Let's be real, Tami. But here is where that moment kind of changed everything, because I was finally in surrender. I wasn't trying to control the outcome this time. Oh, I just got massive goosebumps. Oh man. Woo! Yeah, I was finally in surrender. And I shared a little bit about this in episode 1 about my journey and just where I was at, with my digestive health and my energy and all of that stuff. I was in complete desperation to feel better. And so I had set my, dietitian hat off to the side, because this program that I was starting was pretty laid out. And I was already, I remember before I even got my box, was that I was already thinking like, well, what? I could just get my own protein powder. I could just get my own other stuff, or I could just da 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 da. And that was ego thinking, well, you know better. You're a registered dietitian with a master's degree in nutrition. Like, you're going to know better than this plan. I remember having that thought. But thank goodness my highest self came in, slapped my ego across the face and say, yo, get out of the way this time. Get out of the way. This girl needs to surrender to this process. You have got to get out of her way. And thank goodness my highest self won that tug of war, because I did. I was in complete surrender where I said, this has to work. This has to work because I don't know what else to do. And so I went into it with that energy of complete surrender. And so when her and I were talking, and she's looking at all of these now progress pictures that I have, and there's no after picture. This is my life. I don't plan on stopping working on my health ever. And having these pictures every 16 weeks is kind of a cool little check-in for myself. Do I have to be really, 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 really careful that my body dysmorphia doesn't show up when I'm looking back on those pictures? Yeah. Because even though I can look at those pictures and I can see my stupid abs in most of them, my body dysmorphia will get in real close and look at it real close and be like, yeah, are they as defined as the last 16 weeks though? That's seriously what my body dysmorphia does. Again, she's such a you-know-what. So it doesn't matter. And this is where you have to do this healing. I don't know why I just grabbed this pen. Those of you that are listening, I just grabbed a pen and started using hand gestures. Anyway. Oh, where was I? My ego would have tried to get in the way of all of that. And body dysmorphia right along there. I mean, those two are best buds. And so I do have to be really careful when I look back at those pictures, when I take them every 16 weeks. And I probably have another one coming up here in July. And I just have to be happy with the fact that I'm still showing up. But I don't see them as taking these like after pictures. Like, oh, I'm only going to do this for 3 weeks or 16 weeks or 3 months or 6 months. Like, no, this is my life. And that's why I have a real hard time. I know sometimes we need that thing, that program, that whatever to jumpstart. And that's really what that was for me 8.5 years ago. It was like I needed something to like ignite a fire in me. So I understand that. I really, really, truly do. However, I now know enough if you're not continuing to do the inside work that no matter what your jumpstart is, you'll go right back to the starting line if you don't do the healing work along with it. And thank goodness I did. But I remember starting that and having so much guilt and shame. If you're noticing like a resonating theme with these episodes, that guilt and shame is like the foundation of all of them. Any of you can relate? Yeah. And so, because as a dietitian, you didn't do things like cleanses and detoxing and intermittent fasting. Those were all fads and those are all like poo-poo words you did not use in that world, right? Everything had to be whole foods. And even so many of the recommendations back then felt very out of date. Like, yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm not eating the food guide pyramid base of grains or whatever. Anyway, but so putting myself out there and allowing myself to even use this program was huge because my ego wanted to tell me all kinds of stories about all the things people were going to say, how much judgment there was going to be, and that's why, like, I remember my first post being Confessions of the Detoxing Dietitian because I felt like it was some sort of confession, like I was sinning. Truly. But I was just owning it. I was like, I don't care. I have to do this for me. And so in that moment of not letting my ego control this and being able to be in that complete surrender. And I think back to my 8.5-year self back then. And I am grateful every day that she did that she decided to say, I don't care. I mean, I cared a lot. I cared a lot, but I did it anyway because something inside of me said, you got to do this for you. You can't stop because of what everyone else is going to say or do or think. And now I know that those would have just been people's projections anyway, but I didn't even know that terminology back then. And so thinking about that now for any of you listening, when you're trying to make a change in your life, whether it's a health change or a career change, or just trying to improve yourself, maybe you decided to stop drinking, but now all of your friends that you would go drinking with are giving you shit, right? They're making jokes. Oh, you're lame now. And I definitely got called, what was it? Something about like I wasn't any fun anymore or something like that. I'm pretty sure there was some sort of name that I was called, but whatever. It wasn't worth it to me to like maintain this persona of binge drinking crazy wild Tami, and then I have to pay for it days later because I can't recover. And so like it just wasn't worth it, but it was just like everyone else's projections. Or it wasn't fun Tami anymore. That's what it was. Haha, there it is. But again, now I know that stuff is projections, but that happens all over in your life, right? And that's what we talked about, in episode 9 was projections. And so when it comes to health changes, like going to the gym, whatever it is, making those changes, there's going to be people in your life that are going to make comments and things to try to bring you back down to their level because they're not willing to do that work. And so ego feels better bringing you down than for them to have to look at themselves and feel like, well, I feel bad that I'm not going to the gym. I feel bad that I'm still in this dead end job. So I'm going to make you feel bad or guilty or whatever about your decisions because then it makes me feel better. You got to put your guard up about that kind of stuff. And that's what I did, again, without even knowing that that's what I was doing back then. And I think looking back now, my alter ego wants to like flip 2 birds up to all of the haters back then about what I was doing, because here I am now, age 41. I never stopped. I kept going, and it has just felt like it's gotten easier and better, and I feel the best that I have ever felt. So it's gonna be like, take that, mother. So I always joke that, do you want hood Tami or do you want healer Tami? Because it's either that or it's like love and light. You get to pick. Which one do you resonate with better? I can bring both. And we can be both at the same time. But I do have a little bit of that where it's like, and I use that to my advantage. I don't let that take me down. I only use that as fuel and fire. And I did. And that's why I can be sitting here now, feeling how I feel, looking how I feel. But I had to go into complete surrender in order to do that. And that whole journey was that. But what this difference was I began to really tune into my body. And I began to listen to what it was telling me. And this is where, again, if you're on a health journey, we try to control things on the outside, right? Give me the calorie counts, give me the macros, give me the business plan. Give me the next steps. I don't know how to get out of this job. I need to know that there's already one waiting for me right there with this perfectly laid out, compensation plan. It's got to be there for me already before I make this jump. When we try to control things like that, it don't work like that. We actually get in the way. We get in the way because now we're controlling. And when you control, I know, again, some of you that are listening, you can't see I have my fist clenched right now. To me, that's like control, right? I have a tight grip on whatever it is. How is God supposed to put anything in your hands when they're like that, right? Nothing can come to you that way. And so you have to release. You have to release control and put yourself in complete surrender in order to receive whatever they got brewing for you. And for me, that just so happened like, you know what, girl, you do deserve to feel good. So now that you have surrendered control, gotten out of your own way, here you go. Here's this gift of health that you have been searching for your whole damn life. And I had to do a lot of healing, a lot of reparenting along the way to be able to hold on to that, to be able to dig even deeper into that. But what's so interesting to me is one of the examples kind of sticking with this whole nutrition thing is that at one point we were going to the, conference, around the supplement company and things like that. And so this 16-week challenge thing that I was talking about that I have all these pictures for now, you could like win, right? They had a contest and they would get like 14 finalists and then a grand prize winner. And we were at this conference and I was standing in front of this like giant cardboard cutout, like flexing. And my friends were like, Tami, when are you going to become a finalist? And of course, my ego was like, yeah, no. And I completely laughed it off. Like, that's impossible. I could never do that. And they're like, no, really, seriously. And, after my ego kind of sat back, the highest self was like, yeah, why not? Why not? You have a pretty cool story, a pretty cool transformation. So all I had to do was in the next 16 weeks was just continue doing what I was doing. But in order to like apply to be a finalist, you had to write an essay. And before, because the whole reason I was doing this challenge was because I got $200 every 16 weeks to buy more supplements. And so like, well, that's a no-brainer. And that's really the only reason I was doing it. Again, I had zero intentions of ever becoming a finalist or even applying for it. So every time I would write an essay, I would just write a couple sentences and hit submit just to get my money. But this time I was like, okay, I'll write a legit essay and give it my best. So I kind of went into that 16 weeks knowing that that's what I was going to do at the end, is I was going to write an essay and really kind of go for this. Well, then my ego ramps back up and says, well, if that's the case, you better dial in your nutrition, girl. You better start calorie counting again. You better download MyFitnessPal back on your phone and you better start tracking. And you better start increasing your cardio, cutting your carbs, all that kind of stuff. And it just gave me this list of things that all of a sudden I would now need to do. And so that's what I did, right? Because ego swooped in and thought that that was the best plan. Well, here's what happened. Going back to the whole rebellious and restrictive thing, right? So my restrictive part was like, yeah, let's do that. Let's restrict all of these things and count calories again, because that's what's going to get you the prize. My rebellious part was like, oh, hell no. No, 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 no. But what's interesting, because now at this point, my rebellious part is actually doing something different for me. It's actually serving a different role. And this felt like healing. It didn't feel like sabotage. Now, looking back, it absolutely felt like self-sabotage, because what I was doing was falling right back in to emotional binge eating. And my portion control, I couldn't stop. It was like, it got so triggered simply by downloading MyFitnessPal again, simply by tracking, because I had done that. I actually should have gotten the book, even though I know most of you are listening. But I have this book from when I was in my internship and when I went to that super restrictive phase and I was counting every calorie, every gram of protein, carb, and fat. And I was adding up old school calculator. I have a whole notebook. I spent so much time in that thing. And so calorie counting was super triggering for me. And so I hadn't done it for years. The thought of it was repelling. And so there was certainly a part of me that was still very triggered from that. So the second I downloaded MyFitnessPal, my rebellious part was already on edge. Like, what are we doing? And I was out of control. I was out of control. I knew it was happening, but I couldn't stop it. And this is where I want all of you to like stop beating yourself up. I know that you think you know better. Guess I knew better too. I had a freaking master's degree in nutrition to prove that I knew better. And it did not matter, because when you are triggered, your ego does not care how much knowledge you have. It doesn't matter how many tools you have. Ego wants to protect your inner child. And if you're not feeling good enough, worthy enough, whatever enough, ego don't care what credentials you have. Truly. So release this whole I should know better bullshit. Sorry. Beep. Just leaving myself out after the fact. Explicit. Oh, but so what happened is I am now out of control. I am totally overeating at every meal and I'm spiraling. But thank goodness my highest self again swooped in, slapped my ego across the face and said, "What are you doing? What are you doing? You didn't have to do any of that stuff to be where you are right now. What makes you think that you need to do that to earn a spot as a finalist? And even if you did earn a spot as a finalist and you did all of this restrictive stuff to do it, would that even feel good? Knowing that you had to put yourself in this torture chamber for 16 weeks in order to look a certain way, in order to win a prize? Is that even winning?" And that was like, oh, that was a big wake up call for me. I heard that. I heard it loud and clear. And so logical Tammy finally got back in the driver's seat and like, you're right. You're right. I just need to keep trusting myself. I just need to keep listening to my body. I just need to keep doing what I've been doing. And yeah, I want to be able, if I win, or if I even get nominated, I want to know it's because I was just living my life, because I was just taking care of myself and doing the daily things. I wasn't prepping for a vacation. I wasn't prepping for a show. I wasn't prepping for whatever. I was living life, because that's what we are all actually doing. And again, when your inner child only feels worthy enough to be taken care of because you got a vacation coming up, because spring break's coming up, because you got a class reunion coming up, and it's like, oh, now I got to kick it into gear. Like, think about how many messages that sends to your inner child. Like, oh, so we just take care of ourselves and try to look good and worthy enough so people don't judge us when we're in our bathing suit or when we're back at our class reunion. Ooh. No, your inner child is like, I need you to take care of me every single day. This is about our life. And I understand that sometimes we need a jumpstart. I needed a jumpstart back then. That's basically what that 30-day thing was for me. But you got to keep doing the work, or you got to at least start doing the deeper internal work. Otherwise, you're going to get pulled right back to the start line. Again, my favorite quote, you'll continue to get the test until you learn the lesson. And that was the thing, is like, I finally learned the lesson in that I couldn't go back to those old ways. Those old ways weren't actually ever in alignment. They were just keeping me on the yo-yo cycle all the time. But like, what I had been doing was simply trusting. It was listening to my body. How do you feel? How is your energy? How do you actually feel? Do you feel strong? How are your workouts? How are you sleeping? I was listening to my body's feedback, not something on a piece of paper, not this external source, right? I was listening to my body. And so I scrapped all of that. I deleted my fitness pal and I just kept doing what I had always been doing. I continued to trust. And sure enough, I submitted my essay and I got a call that I was a finalist. And so I just got goosebumps. So that ended up being pretty cool. And yes, I walked up on stage. I hadn't changed a single thing about what I had done. Not a single thing. I didn't do any extra cardio. I didn't do any extra fasting, nothing. I just walked up there living my life, and that felt really good. And I didn't end up winning the grand prize, but I won. I totally won because I walked up there completely authentically me, and someone who truly was representing a healthy lifestyle, which I had been trying to do for most of my life. So I absolutely won in that moment. So that was one little story that I had, is that when I tried to bring back in control, I almost completely sabotaged myself. But that was what was really cool about it, is yes, it felt and looked like self-sabotage, but now I know, and I tell the women and people I work with all the time, is sometimes you get to a certain point, whether it's your inner child or your highest self or whatever, is they're not letting you go back to your old ways. Like, oh, no, 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 no. You have come too far to go back and do that. So we're going to put a hard stop to this. So luckily I saw it that way. I didn't stay stuck in that self-sabotaging cycle. I saw it as them slamming on the brakes, getting my attention, the fact that I was completely overeating at every meal, feeling completely uncomfortable. It was enough to get my attention. They slammed on the brakes and said, "Stop. We're not doing it this way anymore." So I was able to redirect and go down the different path. Not even the different path, just get back on the path I was at. Ego was trying to detour me. And so that was a really cool moment of, oh, you're right. I actually need to keep trusting. And I see this all the time with people, especially when it comes to nutrition and to workouts and things like that, is they want to control. And when that happens, it's like you're no longer listening to your body. You're no longer trusting your body. And there has to be a fine line with that. And really, the body should be the default. Because sometimes, when you're trying something and you're following this perfect plan written out on paper, but yet you're still not losing weight. Or maybe you're gaining weight and like, this isn't making sense. Or your digestive system is a mess and you're running to the bathroom all the time. Or you have no freaking energy because your calories are so low or you're not eating any carbs. Whatever it is, that is all feedback. That is all the ways that your body is saying, this is not working. This does not feel good. How many more times do you want me to try to tell you? And this is, again, one of those things where if you don't listen to the whispers, your body will scream. And that's sometimes kind of what happens is it maybe had been telling us, I don't have any energy. This is so hard to get out of bed every morning. You're like, nope, got to stick to the plan. And again, thinking about from an inner child perspective, when this little kid is in front of you saying like, this isn't working. This is hard. Can you just hear me? Can you listen to me? And you're like, nope, got to do what we're told. Like that doesn't feel good as a kid. You're not feeling heard. You're not feeling seen. And so when you are outsourcing everything to this outside thing and not listening to your body's feedback, not listening to your inner child, they will eventually put a hard stop on things. And so that's where we tend to resist those things. And so looking at all the different ways that we do this. And my other example of this in terms of nutrition was kind of in the opposite way all of a sudden. So when I had switched gyms, I was at one where it was like a 45-minute kind of boot camp type style thing. And then all of a sudden I was going to a different gym where I could be there all day if I wanted to be. And I was lifting heavier and I was there longer, but I hadn't changed anything with my nutrition because it had been working for all these years. Like, why would I change anything? I was pretty dialed in. Then I started to notice I was feeling really tired. I was starting to feel thicker, if that's the right word. I just didn't feel right in my body anymore. My workouts weren't as great. And I noticed. It took a while, took a couple weeks to be like, and of course, oftentimes is like how we look and feel is what first gets our attention because I was like, oh, my clothes aren't like fitting as well, or I wasn't maybe as defined or whatever it was. But I noticed that. And then I really started to check in about my energy levels and I was crashing and all these things. And so I got curious. I got really curious. I was like, okay, body, what are you trying to tell me? And at this point I had been leading Fiercely Focused for a good year now. So I was very tuned into body kindness. I was very much like checking in with my body, like, okay, what is it that you need? And I'm like, well, you need to know where you are, Tami. You don't even know. Because again, I didn't want to track anything because I had so much trauma around calorie counting and stuff. But I was like, okay, let's put in like what a typical day looks like. And let's just evaluate just from there. We're just getting some information. We're just collecting data. So I did. I put in my stuff. And what I had found was that I was unintentionally pretty low carb, high fat. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, apparently that maybe isn't working for me because of based on how I feel. Even though most people kind of nowadays with, there's still low carb stuff out there. There's still keto stuff out there. And some of that can work great for everybody. I truly don't feel like there's like a one size fits all approach when it comes to nutrition and whatever diet you're following. You truly have to listen to your body to find out what works best for you. Because some people thrive off of higher fat diets. I apparently did not. And so I sat with that. And I was like, okay, like, is my body telling me that it needs more carbs? And this was funny. I specifically remember Like, please don't let that be what it is. And I had thought I had done a ton of healing around my relationship with food, right? Up until this point. Well, here I had just put a blanket over it because of the way I was eating. I was eating healthy and I really enjoyed what I was eating. Wasn't missing carbs and I wasn't intentionally cutting carbs. I just didn't consume a lot of stuff like that. Like I would make these broccoli bun things because they were fun and I made them out of broccoli. And so they would have almond flour in there. So I would use that for buns instead of actual buns or, like stuff like that. So it wasn't that I was purposely trying to cut it out, but that's my intuition was telling me that that's what I needed to do was I needed to increase my carbs. And oh man, I was like, because I know a lot of you grew up in like the Atkins era. And I definitely did that in college. And I remember being a raging, you know what? Oh, I just remember all of the lime green jello that I ate because I just needed something. Sugar free. Sugar free. Oh my gosh. Oh, anyway. So it brought up some unhealed stuff. And I realized that I didn't trust my body to process carbs. I was deep down terrified that I was going to gain a ton of weight by increasing my carbs. But my intuition was so loud and it says, no, this is what you got to do. This is what you got to try. And my body was too. So again, another moment of surrender where now I was like, okay, if we're going to do that, I need to be intentional about it. So this time when I downloaded my Fitness Pal, I went in it with very different energy. And then now I was doing this experiment and I just really needed feedback as I'm listening to my body to be able to look at what I'm actually putting in it and to really be intentional about that. And so for about a month, I tracked pretty intentionally and I was trying to get my carbs up to like 45% carbs because prior to that, I had learned I was probably at like 25%. And so I completely flip-flopped my carbs and my fat. And it required a lot of surrender, a lot of trust. And I just kept saying like, okay, body, I'm going to give you a month. I am going to just completely surrender to this. Please give me feedback along the way that this is what I should be doing. Please, 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 please. And it did. Little by little, I started to feel better. My energy was kind of coming back a little bit. My lifts were getting better, all of that kind of stuff. And so I was like, okay, I'll keep going. And then I ended up taking my progress pictures at the end of this. And it was so evident that my body was like, thank you. Thank you for the carbs. Thank you. It was crazy. It was such a drastic difference in that short period of time where it's like, oh my gosh, if I just would have listened all of these years and maybe it really was true that carbs are not evil and carbs were not the devil, which I know a lot of you listening are like feeling triggered by this right now. I was like, ooh, but I would ask you, like, how long have you been low carbonate and feeling and looking the exact same way? But we're so afraid to change it up because we want to control. Because again, ego loves control. It loves anything that is predictable. Where your intuition and your body are over here like, yo, you've been doing these workouts, following basically the same nutrition for years and nothing has changed. How much more feedback do you want? You're just going to keep getting frustrated and then beating me up because you're the one not making any changes. You're not listening to me. I haven't moved up a pound in 6 months, 3 years, whatever it is. That is feedback that your body is somehow resisting whatever you are doing because it isn't working. You're not listening. We're trying to, again, control the outside because that's what we're conditioned. And if we still have healing to do around carbs or whatever it is for you, I'm just using that as an example, your body has been giving you feedback all along the way. And if you're not seeing changes, that is feedback. And that's kind of what prompted this whole conversation today was exploring that and how I could have seen such drastic changes over the last 8.5 years. And for somehow it's just gotten easier and I've been able to put on more muscle and not controlling anything during that time. Literally she had actually asked me, during all of that, were you counting calories and macros and things? And I said, no, just in this one little stint when I needed to experiment to see where I was at and to really listen to my body. That was the only time. And since then, now I kind of have a good gauge on what that still looks like. And so I have my little tips and tricks on just staying in, routine with that and just being pretty dialed in about that. But I don't track anything. I don't weigh and measure. I mean, I have my meals and stuff that I do now, but I hadn't done that just up until the last like 8 months or something. And that was just out of convenience because I was really sick and tired of grabbing the same damn containers out of the fridge and putting them back every stinking day. I was like, you're eating basically the same things anyway. Why don't you just dish it all up at once, get it in containers and make your life a little easier? That was the only reason I did. It was not related to any fitness goals or anything like that or weight loss goals. It was literally just for convenience. So with that, I know like I'm eating about, a couple of vegetables each time or like have a couple of sweet potatoes. And then I fill the other little portion with my protein, which is probably somewhere between like 4 to 6 uh, ounces. What? I'm a dietitian, I promise. I'm certified. But that's literally all it is. I'm just kind of eyeballing that. But again, I have that stuff pretty dialed in to know roughly where that is getting me macro wise. But I also, when I did that, here was the key is when I did that, I wanted to lock in my macros. I wanted, again, if I was like following a science experiment, you kind of have to have some things that are the same. So you can kind of get predictable results. And so I wanted to keep my macros at 45% carbs, 30% protein, and 25% fat. But I didn't care about the calories. And this is where this whole philosophy around freedom within boundaries has been my saving grace and what has allowed me to keep ego in the back and keep me in the driver's seat. And so I'll explain it a little bit more here in a second, but that gave me freedom to still listen to my body because I didn't want to go back to trying to control it all and say, you have to eat 2,200 calories. My body's like, yeah, but do you know what you did for your workout today? That's not enough. Or maybe it was a rest day and I didn't need that much. And so I needed to still be able to listen to my body and feed it intuitively. So some days that was 2,700 calories. Some days it was 2,200 calories. Some days it was more than that. It was 3,000 calories. It didn't matter how many calories because I was listening to my hunger because I'm a woman and on my cycle, every week is freaking different with how I feel and how much I want to eat. And I wanted to honor that because the more we resist change, you're literally like paddling upstream. That is harder, right? I think we can all agree that is harder, paddling upstream versus allowing yourself to just go with the current. And so that's what I was doing. Like I needed to build in the ability to float down the river. And that's what the calories were for me, is that I wasn't going to control that. The canoe that I was in, that was the macros and keeping that ratio pretty dialed in. And so hopefully you enjoyed that analogy. Like what? And it made a huge, huge difference. And so it was really powerful to be in that space. And so when I work with people now, oh man, we got to work through all of the ego stuff to get to that place. And it's great if we can jump in and just start there and allow ourselves to be intuitive and go with the flow. But some people I work with are so resistant. They want their control. Tell me what to eat. Tell me how much to eat. Tell me and sometimes there have been people where like, this is not in alignment because I'm not that kind of coach. There are plenty of coaches out there like that for you who will give you that plan and make you stick to it. Oh man, there's a buddy at the gym right now and his coach is, follow the plan. So, and that's not me because that's not life. That's not life. And I know if you were to give me something super restrictive, no wiggle room, no freedom within boundaries, my rebellious part would tear that shit up and light it on fire. And that's oftentimes what I would see clients do. So it's like, why am I setting them up for that? But I have to work through their ego to be open to kind of my approach with allowing there to be some freedom within boundaries. And so when I create meal plans and things for people, like I'm not going to specifically tell you what to eat. I'm going to give you the framework. I'm going to give you the boundaries but I'm going to give you freedom to choose what you want at every meal and snack because I want you to tune into how your body is feeling and just what you enjoy, because I'm not about to take enjoyment out of your life, because then your inner child feels even worse. Right? We talked about that. I don't know what episode that was. The whole your inner child is sabotaging your weight loss. Yeah, that's generally what happens is when you take away, the fun things. Like, I want to help you build in the fun things. And so this woman I was talking to today, she's like, what if you're gonna like go out for pizza, with your friends? I'm like, then I'm gonna go out for pizza. I'll probably order a side salad. So I'll still get my vegetables because the vegetables are non-negotiable for me. I get vegetables at every meal, no doubt. When I'm out to eat, when I'm eating at home, whatever, I have a vegetable. And this is where there's a funny story about vegetables. Maybe I'll share that in this one or maybe another time. But that's a thing for me. I do probably have some control around that, right? But it's also a healthy thing for me. So I would do that. I would still allow myself to have pizza, but I would always have a side salad with it because I don't have forbidden foods anymore. Because every time I tried to put a forbidden stamp on some sort of food, I could only hold back the floodgates for so long until I felt triggered. And then again, I ate entire pizzas in my car. So telling myself that I can never have pizza again never really worked. So or maybe instead of just trying to bury the issue or just completely ignore it and say, you can't have this for 12 weeks, why don't I try to find a way to fit it in a healthy way? Because this is my life. And I don't want results for just a vacation. I don't want results for just that wedding. Like, I deserve to feel good all the time. And so maybe I should find a healthy approach of like, how can I build in the things that I love and enjoy? And that's what I love to do. And that's, when I kind of put on my dietitian detective hat, is like figuring out what are the things you love? How can we build them in? And that type of stuff. So there isn't anything that is off limits. And that has worked so well for me because otherwise it would absolutely trigger my restrictive and rebellious parts. And so this freedom within boundaries. And that is in so many things in your life, right? Again, whether it comes to relationships or jobs or anything like that, is obviously sometimes we need the safety parameters, right? Of what it is that we're working towards or whatever, but there has to be an element of freedom. There has to be an element of surrender and trust so you can keep your hands open, right? Otherwise, those things aren't going to come to you. And so that was my other little nutrition thing, and seeing it from a different perspective and trusting. But here was another example of control and trust that isn't necessarily nutrition related, is the differences in my pregnancies. So with my daughter, I was dead set on having a natural childbirth. I was very much in that natural vibe. I read all the natural parenting books. I listened to all of the podcasts. You name it, I had researched it. I was going to have a natural childbirth. And as you are probably all imagining right now, I did not. What do you know? Because I tried to control the outcome. I tried to control it so much that I prevented it from happening. And it's such a classic example of what happens when we try to control, is we get in our own way. And that's exactly what I did. Because I went into that birthing experience being so fixated. Again, I know you are listening. You can't see my hands. My hands are tight. My hands are clenched. I wanted to control. I wanted a natural childbirth. And so for those of you that are women and know the whole process of birthing is you need to be relaxed in order for your cervix to relax. And so that's really hard to do if you're clenched in multiple areas. Wow. Sorry, everyone. But truly. And so that's what happened, is I could not relax. I was going into every contraction like I was getting through my last rep at the gym. I was like, I can do this. I can get through it. And so I was like tightening up. I was basically contracting every muscle in my body, thinking I was going to power my way through this because I wanted this natural childbirth. Well, because I did that, I was not allowing. I was not surrendering. I was not letting my body just do what it knows how to do. There are cave women who gave birth and their bodies just knew what to do. But here I thought I knew best because I read all the things and listened to all the podcasts. Like that I knew better. My body's over here like, no, you don't. You're actually effing this up. And so I ended up, and there is no judgment to how people want to birth and labor. This was just me, as I did not want Pitocin. I did not want an epidural. I wanted a natural childbirth. And I don't even really know where that came from or why, but it was just very important to me. And so when I'm now 40 some hours into this and they're like, Tami, I don't know how much longer you want to do this, but at this point I hadn't slept, I hadn't eaten. And so I now I had to surrender. I had to surrender to getting some Pitocin. I said, like, can you just give me like the littlest amount possible? And I think they listened. I don't actually know. And then when it came time to get the epidural, because I had no energy left, like I still have to push this thing out of here. And I've been in labor for like 40 plus hours. So I had to surrender to that too. If I just would have surrendered from the very beginning, none of that might have happened. But I was controlling and I got in my own way and I did not get the outcome that I wanted. Did I have a healthy, beautiful baby girl? 100%. And I'll never forget my midwife had come up to me afterwards and she said, you had your plan, but now you have your story. And here I am sharing that story. Oh, look at that full circle moment. And I love that she said that because that gave me such peace around not having the outcome that I wanted. But I could totally see it now. I was absolutely trying to control that entire scenario. Whereas with my son, almost 5 years later, I hadn't read a damn thing. Like I'm 5 years out. I don't remember anything. Like that is such a haze for those of you who've been through that process. And then you have a newborn, like you're just in that life. Like I didn't remember anything. But I had no impulse to get the books back out, to read the podcast anymore. It's like, I'm just whatever. Like, because I knew what I had planned before didn't work. So why don't I just go in with no plan and hope for the best? And that's truly what I did is I just went in completely surrendered. Yes. Did I want a natural childbirth? Was I going to get in my way about it? No. But I had this different level of trusting that my body actually does know what to do. Because now I've been doing this nutrition thing long enough to trust my body. And having that experience with my daughter, I was like, whoa, you controlled that one. Maybe you should. So I had built a level of trust with my body at this point, going into his labor. And I worked out that morning. I have a video of it. It's pretty hilarious, trying to do a med ball slam with a ball in front of my own belly and little modified burpees on a bench. I love that video. And then my water broke that night, go in the next day. And they sent us out. They're like, yeah, your water broke, all those things, but you're not quite ready to be admitted. And so we walked around, did some things. And there that morning, holy signs and synchronicities. I actually wrote a whole post about this, obviously, like in 2018. That was like, you cannot make this stuff up. The things that happened and the signs that I received during that little time before I gave birth. Ooh, it just gives me goosebumps thinking about it. That'll be another episode. Got checked in probably like 11:30, and I was with a group of midwives, and for some reason, like they got me back in like the birthing tub. And I actually remember having thoughts of when I was with my daughter and I got in the tub and it really slowed things down. And so I was like, oh no. Well, no, I was again, very much in surrender. And it was the coolest, craziest thing was that in between contractions, I would completely pass out. Like no joke. I would have a contraction. I'd like perk up. I'd be all in, like getting through that rep. Right. And then the second it was over, I would almost like fall back on the tub. Obviously, there was a headrest thing there and come like out. Because my body was like, shut it down, recharge, and then we got to go again. I completely let my body take over. Completely. And then I remember them saying, I just actually remember at one point looking, and there was like two midwives there just like on the outside of this tub. And I was like, oh, this is just me and Arlo. No one is intervening at all. And I remember them saying like, "Yo, like, do you feel the top of his head?" And I did, and I just remember thinking like, "That's it? That's his story? Oh, no. Oh, hell no." So that next contraction, we made it a good one, and I pulled him out. I told someone that story on Mother's Day, and they're like, "Wow, we knew you were, next level, but wow." And I love that story, like, that's absolutely me, like, something like, "Oh, yeah, I definitely did that." But it was so cool to see the difference when I tried to control it and I wouldn't listen to my body and I wouldn't trust my body versus when I surrendered all of it to my body. And I want you to take that same lesson into whatever it is for you, whether that's again with your health goals or, maybe even your workouts, but even just other things in your life too. Of thinking about like, where am I trying to control so much that I'm not allowing myself to receive? I received the most beautiful gift in being able to birth my son that way because I released control and trusted my body. And so those are, things that we can be thinking about along this journey. And again, it can be applied to so many things. And I work with women, they got all kinds of things going on. So that's why it's like, I'm not just a dietitian. Like I can absolutely put that hat on, but this always bleeds over into other things in their life, whether they're trying to control certain aspects of a relationship or a person, or it's like their next step, right? I do a lot of stuff with like purpose work with people because it's like, yeah, I'm not fulfilled in this area of my life, but I'm not ready to risk it all to go to the next step. And this is where it requires surrender. And whatever your beliefs are, whether you're religious or spiritual or whatever, it does not matter to me. I do see this as you are going to be asked to surrender. Do you trust? And that is where we will slow it down. That is where we will get in our own way. And I think about all the times I've had to surrender. I told the story about making that huge career leap, surrendering that full-time job with benefits and security to take this leap and trust that God had bigger plans for me. And it's like, no, do this, get into this system, get a solid foundation, but then you better be ready for the next leap. And that actually kind of came up even this last week. And this is why I'm kind of enjoying doing these episodes more intuitively, but this is where you always get more raw emotion from me, which sorry, not sorry. Um Last week kind of something rocked me to my core a little bit because I have surrendered a lot in these last few years. And like personal life, professional life, I mean like starting my career from scratch last year and just so, again, surrendering these programs that I had been running and that were successful and that I loved, and just trusting that I needed to stop them because there was something out there for me. I didn't know what it was, and here you're just like cutting off your source of income by having complete trust that this is what I needed to do in order to get clarity about what I wanted to do, who I wanted to serve, how I was going to serve them. I had to take that time to do that and had to trust. But what hit me last week was that, I thought like I have surrendered all of these huge, massive things in my life. And all of a sudden, I felt like I was getting asked that again. Are you ready to surrender this? This is the next. I was like, what? No, 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 not the one thing. Not the one thing that has been steady and consistent and helped me find me. No, 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 no. You can't take that away. And I definitely had a few days of a pity party. Definitely had a few days calling up some friends and crying about that of like, I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready for that. Why do I got to take that too? It's like my one thing. And yeah, that went on for a few days of, I'm not ready for this change. Why? And then I knew why. It was so clear on why I was being asked to change. Because while I had maybe found myself in this certain phase, in order for me to find the next phase, it was now going to be the test. And it was what was going to, do you believe you're worthy enough? Because if you do, you can't settle for this. It served you for a purpose, for a time. But now it's making you question your worthiness all over again. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Are you going to trust us again to take this next leap into this next chapter of your life? Or do you want to try to control it again? And here's the thing is, once I got over my pity party, I know enough now to know that when I surrender and when I embrace the change, because I know that even though change is hard, it is happening for me. I was able to say, okay, just let's get this over with. No, seriously, my attitude was like, I didn't come this far to only come this far. And if this is what it's going to take, let's go. I'll surrender. I'll follow the path. Things were popping up that I couldn't ignore. Opportunities that were right in my face. And so, yeah, I had to embrace some change all over again and release control over the one thing that I wasn't ready to give control up over. But I'm already seeing some of those benefits and I am trusting. And I'm over here like, don't you dare to God in the universe. Like, I know, like, okay, maybe be careful. I'll be too demanding over here. But I'm also like, okay, that's fine. But if I surrender and I trust, this better be good. This better be good on the other side. And that's why I don't settle for shit anymore, because I have done this work and it better be good. The grass better be greener on the other side. Because I didn't go through any of this to settle. And I know, again, that this next phase was about worthiness. Like, do you really believe that, Tami? You have built up enough. You've had enough experiences, enough tests along the way to finally get to a point where, yes, I feel worthy. And now it's going to make me really prove it. Really prove it. Next level, prove it. And I was like, okay, I'll surrender to this too. Let's go. Because here's the thing, is the more we try to resist change, we're asking for the thing, right? Like, I want this career, this purpose work, right? Because there are so many signs that this current job is not serving me. And that's what happened to me, at one of my previous jobs. There were so many signs that it was not a good fit anymore. It was at one point, again, it served its purpose, it served its role. But when it was time to leave, I resisted that because, again, it was a stable career. It was a steady paycheck. It provided benefits for my family. And I resisted all of the frustration. I'd come home and I would vent about work and how much I hated things and how I had to run and catch the shuttle just to get to my daughter's daycare in time. And it was like nothing about it was a good fit, but I resisted it because of the things I thought I should and the things I felt like I needed to control. And when I resisted that for so long, it's like I was building this tower, right? Of all the times and signals and things that I was ignoring, it was just building this tower higher and higher and higher. And then eventually that tower fell. And when it fell big. And it did not end the way that I wanted it to end. And that's what happens, is we build this tower, the more we resist things and the harder that baby falls. So if you don't want God or the universe coming in and completely demolishing your life, then maybe you should have started listening a couple years ago when it was lightly tapping you on the shoulder and saying, hey, you're unsatisfied at this job. And you're like, yeah, I know, but you got to pay the bills. It's like, yeah, but there's actually this purpose out there for you. And you're like, no one actually believes in their dreams. That's too risky. That's for the dreamers. That would never happen. I don't have the money. I don't have all the stories that ego will tell you to keep you safe, but to keep you stuck. And because you don't have the actual roadmap on how to get to that next thing, we won't do it. And I remember specifically working with a woman, like it's starting to look so much clearer about where she's supposed to go. But until she leaves this other job that is not serving her, the path isn't completely clear because she's not completely releasing control. Not that she has to like up and quit her job. I mean, that's what I did. But I wouldn't, not going to write the manual on that for anyone, but unless you are a massive risk taker. Oh my God. But it was, I just like, I need to know. I need to know that my salary would be this and that I would offer this and da 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 da. It's like, you're closing the doors before God can even open them for you. And again, sometimes those are our little test of like, are you going to trust? And sometimes those asks get bigger and bigger. And it's going to require more of you. And so you can build up that tower of resistance and watch it come crashing down to where you get fired or to where you're in a massive breakup or you end up gaining a ton of weight or you have a health crisis, whatever you want that massive tower to be, know that your resistance to change is what built it. And that you not listening to the signs, the clues, the symptoms was what built that. And eventually, the only way to get your attention is to have it come crashing down. When God has been tapping you on the shoulder for years, you got to make some health changes. Your joints hurt. You got to make some health changes. You can't get up the stairs without losing your breath. You got to make some health changes. You're on another medication. You got to make some work changes. You are so stressed. You can't even enjoy time with your family. You got to make some changes. This relationship is abusive. It's toxic, whatever it is. And you weren't listening. It was been telling you for days, for weeks, for months, but likely for years. And every time we chose, our ego chose to ignore it because that felt easier instead of actually looking at it, looking within, feeling the feels, healing our stuff. Instead, we looked outside as we were building this tower of resistance. And now we're watching it come crashing down. And that's when it feels like, why is this happening to me? Oh, no, 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 no. That 100% happened for you because you weren't going to make changes if it didn't happen that way. And hopefully that's enough to get your attention. And I will tell you that unfortunately, it doesn't always work that way. I worked in cardiac rehab and people, had massive heart attacks or a stroke. And you would think that would have been enough to wake them up to say, we got to make some changes here. And some people it absolutely did. And other people's, their ego took them right back to where they were. And that's really unfortunate because you're going to have to experience that tower moment again and again and again. And that's where I have learned, like, I don't want tower moments anymore. Like, I don't need to build that up. I don't want to paddle upstream anymore. I don't want things to have to be harder. I want to be able to flow downstream. And so while I may be looking down and, and last week it felt like, oh, there's some whitewater rapids here. Oh boy, giddy up. I'm not going to paddle upstream in whitewater rapids. No, thank you. But can I really dig in deep and center myself? Remember that I'm strong. Remember that I'm worthy and grab that paddle and let's go. And we're going to go down maybe a little bit faster. And we're going to experience some change real fast here. That's going to be harder, right? It's harder paddling through white rapids than it is a cozy little stream. And sometimes that's what that's going to look like. I'm still going with the flow. It's just, up some speed there. And that can be scary, but also be exhilarating too. And so that's kind of what happened is as things were changing, and I was sensing that, it was scary. But at the same time, I was being presented with opportunities that were also exhilarating and showing me that, hey, this whitewater rapids thing is kind of fun. It's scary, hell yeah, but it's kind of fun. And I kind of want to see if I can do it. And that started to kind of shift the energy around that change and being able to finally embrace it. And so, I really, really, really encourage you to look at areas in your life where your fists are closed and you are controlling your schedule. You're controlling a certain routine. You're controlling your kids or, your spouse, or controlling everything at work because no one else can do it right. And I talked a little bit about that before, how sometimes you deny other people to step into their gifts if we're always swooping in to do everything, right? But to really look at, like, where am I controlling and why, right? You can go a step further, like, why am I controlling? And that's when you start to get into inner child stuff, because that's when your ego felt safest, when things are predictable. But now you can remind them that I don't need to control these different aspects of my life anymore. I want to be open and curious of what happens next, because I know that anything that is meant for me will circle around and come back to me when I'm ready for it, when I have done the healing work, when I'm ready to receive it. Because sometimes God's like, yeah, girl, I know what you want. I want that for you too, but you ain't ready to hold on to it. I'm going to give it to you, and it's going to slip right through your hands. I need to give you all of these tests and things to get to the point where once I give it to you, you're going to hold on to it and you're going to do something with it. And that's what these last few years now I'm like, oh, I needed to build up my worthiness, because now when I'm going to be ready to receive, I need to be able to hold on to it. And I wasn't at that place before, because I would be in and out and questioning it, right? I was building it up slowly but surely, but I wasn't at a place where I could confidently hang on to it. And I'm actually now confidently hanging on to the fact that I am worthy. I know what I deserve, and I'm not settling for less. And so it's like, okay, if that's the case, then that's going to require another level of surrender, another level of trust. But again, like, I'm here for it. I haven't come this far to only come this far, and this is my one shot. So let's go. So I really want you to sit with that and think about it and really explore where we could start to build in some freedom within boundaries. That way you still feel safe, right? Boundaries can help you feel safe in this. But that freedom within is where your inner child can be like, oh, okay, yeah, like a kid still needs structured meals and snacks, but they're going to maybe want some choices of what that is, right? Like my kids always knew that they were going to have some sort of carb and some sort of protein for a snack, but I let them choose. So there was boundaries in that we're having these two things, but they had the freedom to choose what that was. So it's little stuff like that. Like, where can I know I'm going to work out 3 days a week, but maybe I'm going to so there's my boundaries, but maybe I'm going to allow myself to see how I feel. Maybe I'm not feeling like a heavy strength training day, so maybe I'm going to do yoga today. Or, you know what? I'm not feeling like a walk today. Maybe I'm going to hit the gym. So you still have the boundaries, but you're giving yourself the freedom to really check in with how you're feeling. And again, thinking about how that could apply to a job or even to a relationship or whatever is looking at that can be so, so important. And it will allow so much more into your life when your hands are open and ready to receive. So let me know if anything in this episode resonated with you, and if there are some areas that you are ready to look at that maybe you're controlling, and explore what you can do to lean into that trust, and to trust that your body knows, that your highest self knows, and that your inner child knows, and that whatever higher power for you knows. And ego is gonna want to fight you on that one. But this is where you can ask your ego to kindly, sit back on the bus and let these other ones take over and guide you and open you up to the possibilities. Otherwise, we stay stuck, and that's up to you. That is 100% up to you. But you got to get a little stern with your ego sometimes to make sure that you are the one driving. So let me know, again, if anything resonated. And again, anytime you want to dig into this stuff, and maybe you don't even know. Sometimes you don't even know because you're so used to it, where you might need an outside perspective to be like, yeah, girl, you got some control issues there. I wouldn't say it like that, but I would find a much more compassionate and empathetic way to be like, yeah, yo, you got to release some control. But to be able to help you see that, like sometimes you can't see it yourself. But I actually just sent some stuff to my branding manager, and because like we do things through our own lens, and so that when she looked at it with a totally different perspective, it was like, oh yeah, I didn't even say what this was. I'm like, okay. So sometimes you need someone else to be able to look at it and be able to kind of point that out, and maybe provide some suggestions that maybe you wouldn't have thought of, or help find ways to show you, no, 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 this is happening for you. That absolutely happened for you. Don't you see what the lesson was in all of this? Like, oh my gosh, I totally do. And that just like gives you so much confidence to start to embrace change. And I think that's what I love most about working with people, is when they start to get that. They start to see how things are happening for them. Even when it's scary, even when it's hard, even when they slip up and have setbacks, we are able to see, how did that serve you? It's like, oh yeah, there was a lesson in that. Like 100% there was. And now you don't have to repeat it. And sometimes you do. Sometimes you need, again, the test a couple times to really learn a lesson. Or it's just because it's not that you didn't learn one level of that lesson. Like I said, there are levels of worthiness, right? And now I'm being asked at this whole different level of it. And so, yeah, I feel like there's been some things like, gosh, am I still learning this? Like, no, you're just at a different level. It's like peeling that layer of the onion. You're like, you got a lot of layers to peel. There are depths to our wounds. So sometimes it might feel like you're taking these steps back when really you're just going deeper in your healing. And so that alone, like just having someone help you shift that perspective, can be really helpful around this kind of stuff. And so that's what I truly love to do with people. And so, but I ask again, as always, I'm over here. Oh, gosh, I can't believe I didn't share this at the beginning, is that we hit 1,000 downloads before I uploaded episode 10. I got a little badge, and I was like, so thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you to all of you that have downloaded the episodes and are supporting this little engine that could over here. That was really awesome. And of course, it was really funny because my ego for a split second wanted to do the math and be like, Tammy, that's not that great. And I was like, hell no, you are not going to take that achievement away from me. That I can celebrate that. I don't care how slow and steady this is going. I'm out here doing the work. I'm out here showing up. And I'm not going to let ego try to make me feel bad about something I should be very, very proud of. But I did have to catch myself on that and wondering, like, Tammy, you're going to put that out there and everyone else is doing the math too. And I'm like, I don't care. Are they all here hosting a podcast? No. And I think I shared in one of my stories, the Brene Brown quote, like, if you're not out in the arena getting your ass kicked once in a while, like, I don't need your input or your feedback. Nope. And that's kind of, that was, my hood Tammy coming out like, yeah, no, I don't need your feedback or your judgment on my 1,000 downloads or whatever. It's like, I'm going to feel good about that. I'm going to feel good about that. But yeah, it was kind of interesting. So anyway, thank you. Thank you so much. And again, I am trying to do everything I can to get this message out there, and starting to reach out and partnering with, other like businesses and places that can help share this message, that maybe have a similar audience where this could be a free resource for someone. So if you know or have connections of any place that's like, yeah, maybe these messages would help them, like shoot them a link or send me a message or something like that, so I can help grow this podcast and get this message out there, because I know there are tons of people out there that needed to hear this one today, or needed to hear last week's on the parenting thing, or, and so just having people like you out there kind of being my eyes and ears for who I could reach out to, who I could talk to, would be absolutely amazing. And I know you would receive some good karma for that. So, and you would definitely receive lots of positive energy from me as well. But it's that kind of stuff, if this episode resonates, like to just hop on and give it a quick rating or a 5-star, to make a comment. Like, you have no idea. I don't understand analytics or any of that stuff. I just know that it's helpful and that it helps you, get in the search or whatever it is. And so those little things mean the world to people like me. And I know when you're working like a 9 to 5 and stuff like that, or you've got a marketing team or whatever, like you don't think about that kind of stuff. And That's one of the things I wish I didn't have to, but I do have to, and that is my reality. And that's not the work that I really want to be doing. That's not my zone of genius. My zone of genius is being here. And so the less time I'm out there doing stuff that isn't completely lighting me up or that isn't my zone of genius, like the better, because then I can spend more time doing this, but that's where you need the support around you. And that's where I hope, my faithful listeners can start thinking about that. Like, oh my gosh, what? Yeah, I could totally share this with a friend, or I could share this with my boss, and maybe we could have her come in and talk about, imposter syndrome or self sabotage at work or whatever it is. Like, I'm here at your service to be able to share this message and this mission, and in any way that you can help get that message out there would absolutely mean the world to me, a little Tam Tam, because I don't know. I don't think I shared this story yet. Ooh, I will share more of it, but just the gist was that my third grade picture, on the back of it, she wrote, "Make sure you let everyone see me." She wrote that. My 8-year-old self wrote, "Make sure you let everyone see me." So she always knew, get out there and share this message. And that's why when I say me and little Tam Tam, I truly do mean that. So I'm going to wrap it up, because for those of you that are watching on YouTube, the sun is starting to come in and the visual is getting real funky over here. But I think we're in HD video now. So yeah, enjoy that. It's like fading in and out, and I'm like a red lobster and then different color, whatever. So I'm going to hop off for that steak alone, and just because you guys have been with me for long enough. But thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, please just let your inner child out to play. Don't control them so much that they don't know how to have fun anymore. All right? Do something fun for your inner child, and I will see you guys back next week. Bye.